and welcome to the 10th episode of Talk Wildlife. I can't believe we're on our 10th episode already. I feel like we've covered so many topics, and yet there's just hundreds more that we haven't even touched on yet, which I can't wait to do. Thanks to everyone who's been listening. We haven't set out doing this podcast expecting a lot of listeners. We just love doing it, and I'm enjoying it so much. So even if this episode only gets one listen, thank you so much, whoever you are, for listening. Really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy it. If you've got any ideas or anything you'd like us to cover, then just let us know, because maybe when we're on episode 20, it will feel like episode 10 was ages ago, and I'd love to do a lot between then and now. And hopefully, within maybe a month or two, we'll be on episode 20. The topic of the episode today is animals and their offspring, and this will be one episode, probably of many. So what we'll be doing today is we'll be talking about 5 animals each and interesting facts about their offspring. We've picked these animals specifically because we believe that they're very interesting when it comes to their young. So, let's talk wildlife. So Kev, why don't you start us off? What's the first animal that you have for us today?
The first animal I'm going to be talking about briefly today is the aphid. Now, they are really, really cool creatures. I really enjoyed learning about them. But do you know what a baby aphid is called?
I have literally no idea. The only thing that comes to my head is aphidling. And I know it's not going to be aphidling. Go on, why don't you tell us?
It's definitely not an aphidling, though I think that should definitely be the name.
Can we replace it with aphidling? Can we all just agree?
So the world of wildlife all agreed now baby aphids called aphidlings. So an aphid baby is known as a nymph, but they have a really, really interesting reproductive cycle. So the first aphids to appear are always female, no males, and these females clone themselves and pop out live offspring, and they can produce up to 80 aphids a week, and they're known as altera. So they're basically mini clones of the parent, the female parent. So because there's no males at this stage, the eggs which hatch are from the previous year, and they're all female. Now these are known as stem mothers, so they hatch from eggs. But then these stem mothers reproduce themselves, so they clone themselves into little mini aphids known as altera, and they can produce up to 80 of these a week. Now when it gets to the end of the summer, males are started to produce, and the reason why the males come at the end of the summer, because the females can clone themselves and the population does really well, but they need the males, because when the chromosomes mix between the male and the female, they actually make the eggs, and it's those eggs which overwinter and produce the next lot of stem mothers the next year. And that's just some amazing facts about aphids.
Nice. I still think they should be called aphidlings or baby aphids, baphids.
Aphids. I like that one. Aphidlings, I think, is my favourite there,
Aphidlings.
So, Flo, what species are you talking about?
My first one is hedgehogs.
Ooh, I love a good
So,
hog.
not a species as such, but a type of animal. And I chose hedgehogs for a couple of reasons. First of all, though, what do you think hedgehog babies are called?
Hoglets?
Yep, you knew that one.
I did, yeah.
Acting like you don't. But...
yeah, I knew that one. I've worked with enough hoglets.
Did you know baby hedgehogs can also be called piglets, and they're also known as urchins?
I knew the urchins one, but I didn't know they were also called piglets.
I think piglets is just sort of something that people call them rather than the official name, because I suppose hedgehog, it's a hog that lives in a hedge. So piglets, it makes sense. Just like you'd call a baby hog, as in a pig, a piglet. The interesting thing about the name urchin is that all hedgehogs were actually referred to as urchins in the medieval times, and sea urchins were actually named after hedgehogs, also being known as sea hedgehogs or hedgehogs of the sea.
That's amazing. What a fact. So how many young do they usually have in a litter?
They tend to have 4 to 6 young, and in the UK they often have 1 litter a year, but they can have 2, usually occurring about September time or August, when the young are often not old enough to overwinter themselves and have to be helped out by people a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's right, because you usually see a late influx of baby hedgehogs in the wildlife hospitals, don't you?
Now, another fact about hedgehogs is that if you know that there's a hedgehog nest in your garden or anywhere near you, you have to be really careful not to disturb them, because if disturbed, the hedgehog mother will actually sometimes cannibalise her own young, so you've got to be really careful. And another interesting thing is that most young mammals only need colostrum for the first 24 hours, but hedgehogs actually receive colostrum from their mother for 42 days.
That's amazing. 42 days.
42 days. So it's something you have to be aware of if you're rearing a hedgehog in captivity.
That's amazing. I didn't even know that. That's absolutely incredible.
So go on, what's your next animal?
Another great species is the adder. Now, do you have any idea what a baby adder is called?
I don't even know where to start. I have no idea. I can't just keep putting ling on the end of things. Snakeling.
You're not far off. Snickling?
I was going to say sniglet. It sounds like a Pokemon. I have no idea.
It's not Danger Noodle either.
Oh yeah, no. See, yesterday when we were talking about doing this podcast, I said to Kevin, if a snake is called a Danger Noodle, what would a baby snake be called? And Kevin said Danger Spaghetti. And I said to him, how is spaghetti a young version of a noodle? And he couldn't answer.
It's just because it's thinner and...
noodles are often thinner than spaghetti. But, I mean, how is a young noodle a spaghetti? I just don't know.
How's a young noodle?
What would a young noodle be?
Where's this gone?
Like,
it's just totally gone
something
away.
wheaty, like a danger wheat?
Well, a baby adder or a baby snake is known as a snakelet or a hatchling.
I was so close. I said sniglet and snakeling. That was. I think if I'd combined the two of those, I would have had it right. So say that again. It's a what? A snakelet.
Snakelet or a hatchling.
Oh, hatchling's kind of obvious, but snakelet, okay.
So you would think something we called a hatchling would be something that hatches from an egg, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, lots of snakes lay eggs and the young hatch out and then off they go independently into the world. But adders are really different, and I think it's to do with the viper family. So what happens is they have the eggs inside their body and the young inside the eggs hatch inside the mother.
Ooh.
And then they give birth to live young. And as soon as they're born, that's them independent. They're independent from birth. So they'll go off into the world, biting people's ankles and poisoning the nation.
So do the mothers just give birth to the bits of eggshell afterwards?
I don't know. There was nothing
or
to
do
say.
They absorb it back in themselves for nutrients?
They do. They have the eggs inside. They hatch them inside their body and then they give birth to live young. I'd love to see a baby adder, but it's really cute.
Oh, I bet.
I wonder if they got the diamond shapes. But they can have between 3 and 20 young at a time.
Wow.
That's a lot of eggs and not young to push out.
That is a lot of young.
Yeah, but that's adders for you. So Flo, what's the next animal you're going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about seahorses. I'll give you a clue. Their young are not called sea foals or sea ponies. What do you think their young are called?
Sea stick.
Sea stick.
I have no idea.
Their young are called fry.
Fry. I think I know that. That rings a bell.
F-R-Y.
That's so cool.
I didn't know that. I had no idea.
That's a really interesting one. So tell us more about the fry.
So it's species dependent, but they usually have between 5 and 1,000 babies at once.
Wow.
But only 5 out of 1,000, so 0.5%, make it to adulthood, which explains why they have so many. Now, the reason seahorses are really unique is because it's actually the males which give birth as opposed to the females, like in most species. So the females deposit her eggs into the brood pouch of the male, and that's where the male fertilises the eggs, and then he gives birth to them. And there's a couple of theories as to why this is. The first is that while the male broods the eggs, the female can then make more eggs. And the second is that they're then sharing the energy expenditure burden. So the female has to make the eggs, then the male has to brood them. So together, they're both expending a lot of energy on the young, rather than one of them expending all of the energy. So
that's a really efficient way for an animal who doesn't have a high success rate of 1,000, and only 5 make it to adulthood. If the female can keep producing that many eggs, that will surely help keep the population up at a good level. Yeah, so in one day, the male could give birth to all the young, and in that same day, it could then be brooding the next lot of eggs because the female can make them while he broods them. Wow, that's so cool. And from the day of birth, the young are self-sufficient, and they actually cling to other young of their own age to keep them together, and they use their tails to hold on to each other. I've seen a photo of that before, loads of fry, all tangled together with little tails into like a big clump. It's like a little nursery clump of seahorses. There's quite a sad photo online of a seahorse clinging onto a cotton bud in the ocean, and I think it went quite viral as a sort of picture to symbolise human waste in the ocean. It's quite a shame. Oh, that is sad. So what's your next animal to speak about, Kevin? So keeping on topic about being in the oceans, my next one is sharks. So Flo, what do you think a baby shark is called? Can I start singing the famous song? You can do it.
No, it's alright.
Ah.
There we go, that's all I'm doing. Assuming it's not a ling.
No ling involved here.
Or let.
No let, no ling. No do.
Trying to think what a baby fish are called. And it's not a hatchling, no, you said no ling. Shark. I don't know, I have no idea.
It's a pup. A baby shark is called a pup. And depending on the species of shark, they can have between 1 and up to 100 young at any time. And you're thinking, wow, that's a lot of sharks.
Yeah.
However, it's not that simple. There is a reason that some sharks can only have 1 or 2 and others can have up to 100. And that's because there's 3 different ways pups are born. One is in an egg, or we know that commonly as a mermaid's purse, or in some places, a devil's purse. And that usually just has the one shark pup in it. So that will be attached somewhere in the ocean floor to vegetation, and then that pup will grow and hatch out that egg. So that's an example of just one. Or the eggs are hatched inside the mother and then born, pretty much like I was saying about the adder. Or the pups grow inside the mother like humans and then born. So there's no egg involved. So you can have the purse or the egg and then the hatching inside the mother, or how humans do, have an actual young inside you, then just give birth to it. And once all pups are born, no matter what species, they're all independent straight away. Again, very much like the adder. When the adder hatchlings are born, they're all independent. And it's the same with the shark pups. When they're born, no matter which process of those 3 ways they can be brought into the world, as soon as they have been born, they are then independent. So that's me done on sharks. Flo, what's your next animal you're going to tell us about?
Pigeons.
Oh, yay! I love pigeons.
One of our faves. Baby pigeons, I won't ask because I know you know, are called squabs.
Yep.
But when they're a bit older and they squeak a lot, they're often referred to by people as squeakers for obvious reasons, because they go about going...
You love that though. Like, working the wildlife rescue, that's one of your favourite things.
I love them. I love them so much.
Little squeaky babes.
Hatchling pigeons have yellow down, and they're often mistaken for ducklings by members of the public. It's not very common to see baby pigeons, I think because they nest in quite hidden away areas. And pigeons are really fascinating because both parents feed the young, which is quite normal in birds, but they produce crop milk, which can be made of anything they eat, and that means they can breed all year round. They tend to have 2 at once, and sometimes they'll have older siblings with just hatched younger siblings as well.
I recently, through my business, under licence, had to remove a pigeon nest because the pigeons were going to be shot if I hadn't removed them from my client. And there was 2 nests, just two adult birds, 2 nests. There was the 2 squabs, which were just about fledgling age, but the parents were already laid and were starting to incubate another egg. So those 2 were being shunned by the parents now to continue on their own. And to be honest, if I hadn't stepped in and done my job, they probably would have died anyway because they were stuck behind netting.
Pigeons are often referred to as being not the best of parents, and that's because a lot of birds, when they fledge, they go into the ground and they can't fly, but their parents keep feeding them. But oftentimes with pigeons and colour doves, when they land on the ground, their parents often just assume that they're self-sufficient now, and if they can't get back up to the nest, they often get ignored. Not all the time, but it is very common. And in fact, we had a colour dove come in a few weeks ago, and it was pouring with rain. It was basically a storm. And the people who found the colour dove said they found him on the ground, but his parents were already up in the nest mating and making new colour doves, just thinking, oh, well, we lost that one, it's on the ground, oh, well, we'll just make some more. So pigeons on the ground often do need picked up, or even just returned to the nest, depending on their age and size.
But for that, always consult your local wildlife rescue before you do anything like that first, just to get the best advice. Always.
Consult wildlife rescues before you do pretty much anything, unless an animal's in imminent danger. So what's the next animal you're going to be talking about, Kev? And they're young.
Okay, the next one I'm going to do is the good old deer. So in the UK, we've got 6 species. I'm going to go through each of the species and see if you know what their young are called. Let's start this off. So we'll go with fallow deer. What do you think a fallow deer is called? Oh, there's 3 options.
A fallow deer is called a fallow deer?
Kid or calf. So a baby fallow deer is a...
Calf?
No, it's a fawn.
Ah. I should think F with F, fawn, fallow.
That works. A baby roe deer is a...
Kid.
Correct. A baby red deer is a calf.
Calf. Ah.
A baby sika deer.
Kid?
A calf.
Oh, I'm going to get them all wrong.
A baby Chinese water deer.
Calf.
A fawn. And a baby muntjac deer. It actually goes between two.
Oh, yes. Is that not kid or fawn?
Yay! Okay, so
I got
you got
2
one
out
with
of
2.
6. 2 out of 6.
Yeah, but the one
You'd
you
say
got
3
was,
out of 7 then.
Yeah, you got the one which had the 2 perfectly right. So next time you see a baby deer, it may not be a fawn. There's a good chance it's not. Deer often leave their young alone for long periods, and the mum will return to them throughout the day to feed them. So if you come across a baby deer and you're like, oh no, they're on their own, they're probably not. The parents do leave them. Baby deer give off very little or to no scent at all. Reason for this is that they're not an attraction to a predator, so a predator can't sniff them out and find them. So if you find a baby deer, stop. If it's not injured, don't touch it, turn around, walk away. Because the only thing keeping the parents from getting to that baby deer that you think might be abandoned is going to be you.
And if you want to keep an eye on it from afar, make sure it is from afar, because sometimes people will keep an eye on a deer and phone in and will say it's not had its mum visit it yet. But if they're standing within about 10 metres of the deer, then that's why. Even 20 metres, so make sure you're very far away and you can just see them, and to make sure the mum's still approaching.
Yeah, the mum, even if you're a field away, the mum's still going to be a bit nervous for you being about, because that's her most precious thing in her life. She's not going to take any chances leading a predator, and especially a human predator, to where her young is. So if you find a baby deer on the ground, leave it and walk away as long as it's not injured. Don't touch it, don't interfere, walk away and let it continue.
You saying if you find a baby deer on the ground made me think of when I said if you find a pigeon on the ground. It's like, if you find a baby deer on the ground, don't put it back in a tree.
Yeah, please don't be going putting baby deers in a tree. That'll definitely,
The mum probably won't be able to do much for it.
Yeah, she's definitely going to climb in trees. Okay, Flo, what is your next animal?
My next one is bats.
Oh, nice.
So what do you think a baby bat is called? It's not anything too fancy. It's a pup.
Oh, pup again, just like a shark.
Yeah. So mothers only have one baby at a time usually, which clings to her. And relative to their size, bats have very long pregnancies and very few young. If you think of, for example, a mouse, which is roughly the same sort of size, and they might have a litter of 6 or more young, and a bat just has 1, and they've got a long pregnancy as well. Now, to allow for the added baby weight of a baby bat clinging to them, females of some bat species actually have slightly different wing shapes to their male counterparts, which allows them greater lift while flying. If you think of the weight that's holding them down, it really benefits them, but it's quite interesting how they have more efficient wings than the males of their species.
That's really cool. Now, didn't you, at your work, for those who don't know, Flo works at a wildlife hospital, you had a bat in just recently and it gave birth while it was at the hospital, is that right?
Yeah, it was attacked by a cat, and we went to clean her out a few days ago, and she just had this little baby bat clinging to her. So we're being really careful with her now, obviously, and making sure she's getting all the right nutrients and everything, just to completely ensure that her young one's okay.
Incredible.
In a few species of bat, the females will actually give their young to other females to look after while they go out and hunt for a while, almost like a babysitting service for when they want to go out hunting outside and then they return. And because sometimes the roosts have thousands and thousands of bats, they use echolocation and scent to find their young. Okay, what's your next one?
My last one is one of my favourites. It is the dragonfly.
Nice.
Now, Flo, do you know what the young of a dragonfly is called?
I feel like I should.
So the dragonfly lays eggs, up to 100 eggs at a time.
Can you give a clue?
I don't know, it begins with an N. It kind of has
Nymph.
2 stages. Yes, nymph. When the young come out of the egg, they're known as prolarva, but then they quickly, it's just a really quick stage between that becoming a nymph.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone doesn't know, you've probably never seen a nymph, but they are ferocious predators underwater. Some are laid under the water surface, some are laid on stems above the surface. And as soon as they hatch, they go straight down into the pond. And they eat so many different species in the water, and as much as they can. And they have this jaw which shoots out like Alien, the movie, the aliens, and it catches its prey and brings them back in. Now, it can take anything from up to 2 years, even longer. It can be to do with the water temperature and where that pond's located.
It's because I think this happens with frogs or toads as well, possibly both. It's when the conditions are at their best for it to go from one life stage to the other, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Well, when they're in this nymph stage, They go through what are called molts. That's when they grow and they shed their skin and they get a bit bigger, and it's moving them along the process of becoming a dragonfly. So they can go between 8 and 17 molts in their lifetime before they're ready to emerge as a dragonfly. So I'm guessing the ones who are in the pond for longer, if there's not much food or the conditions are not great, it might take them longer to get to that molt. So it could be a long time before they're ready to emerge if they're not getting enough nutrients for them to go from the stage of being a nymph through all their molts to becoming a dragonfly. So Flo, what's the last animal you're going to be talking about?
Hares.
Oh, I love hares.
Yeah, and again, I won't ask you what the young are called because I know that you know. So baby hares are called leverets, and the mothers tend to have 4 to 6 young in one litter. Now, unlike rabbits, they're born and live above ground, fully furred, eyes open, and what they do is, instead of being underground, they lie in what's called a form, which is basically just a shallow dip in the ground, and they stay very still throughout the day when their mother's not with them, which is the majority of the time. That's how they stay out of sight, kind of like in the same way that a deer does. It's quite common that people will pick up baby hares, leverets, and say that they're abandoned because the mum's nowhere to be seen and they're above ground and they're not doing much, but this is normal behaviour. Sometimes the mum will only visit them once a day to feed them, usually in the evening, so it's very common for people to find them and assume there's something wrong. So if you found what you think is a baby leveret, or if you're not sure and you think it's maybe a little rabbit, then as usual, keep your distance, don't touch it, phone a wildlife rescue centre, see what they say.
Again, just like you said, it's literally the same advice about if you found a baby deer.
Mm-hmm. So they're very different to rabbits in that sense. Hares and rabbits are very different behaviours, very different ecological niches. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the episode. We'll be doing more, as I say. We just picked 5 that stood out to us for whatever reason because of their young and because they're interesting. But there's so many species out there, and even more have interesting names for their young or interesting facts about their young that we don't know about yet. We largely tend to focus on British animals just because they're the ones we're most interested in personally. A lot of people are really into lions and tigers and elephants, and we find them amazing as well, but we want people just to appreciate the ones that you can find in your gardens and all around the country, in your cities, in our countryside, because they're the ones that we interact with most, and it's quite common for the animals you see day to day to sort of be forgotten because they're not seen as exciting and interesting since we don't have to go out of our way to see them. And I really want people to appreciate the nature on their doorstep again, appreciate the animals out there in our country. We were going to do kangaroos in this one, but we didn't in the end just because it was a bit of a standout one from the rest. But we will do kangaroos in another episode, and you can probably imagine why, because they have quite unique behaviour when it comes to how they look after their young and the name of their young as well. Not sure what our next podcast episode is going to be about yet, but keep an eye out for it. We'll hopefully be posting it very soon. Okay, bye!
Bye!